Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass. Thank you for watching this Ag Forecast, brought to you by Agrible, the makers of Morning Farm Report. Our software gives growers the insights to make the best decisions possible about their operations. Well, as I think about how we've started July 2017, I wanted to take a step back through time and take a look at how some big and some bad years panned out for the first 11 days of July. So what you're looking at here are the temperature anomalies. Those are differences from normal for July 1 through July 11th for 1988. That was a year where we were 27% below trend on yields. Now look at the warm anomalies we had across a huge section of the Corn Belt. What about 2002, another year that was relatively bad, 10% below trend? Pretty much every single location in the first couple of weeks of July was very, very warm, and we had some very high temperatures in the Central Plains and in the eastern part of the Corn Belt as well. Well, of course, we got to talk about 2012. Those first 11 days, extremely warm in the heart of the Corn Belt, stretching all the way back to the Dakotas. That was a year we were 35% below average. Now let's take those three very, very rough years and compare them to some better years, like 2014, a year where we were 8.8% above trend, our record-setting year at that point. Look at how cool the Corn Belt was. Take a look at 2015, 4.5% above trend. Look at how cool the first 11 days of the month were as well. And finally, 2016, 8.5% above trend. Remember, while June was hot in 2016, July, the beginning of it, came in cool and wet. Now, I'm showing you this because I want to show you 2017. 2017, we know how hot and how very dry it's been in parts of Montana and the Dakotas stretching into Nebraska. But we've seen the first 11 days be quite warm across Iowa, southern Minnesota, and into Illinois. Only the far eastern part of the Corn Belt and parts of Michigan and Wisconsin have been cool and have been wet. Keep this in the back of your mind as I go through the rest of this forecast, because we're trying to see what we think these yields are going to be like toward the end of this year. Now let's come back to our most recent precipitation and look at the U.S. Drought Monitor. Now when I look at this, of course my focus is drawn to the northern Corn Belt. We have seen some pretty rapid onset of drought, basically from the end of May through most of June in the northern part of the Corn Belt here in the Dakotas. And it has been exceptionally dry, some of the worst drought they've seen in some fields here in a very long time. But we can see there's a little kind of dry stretch that goes from South Dakota into parts of Nebraska, but cuts across this part of Iowa and into Illinois. And I want to talk about that in more detail in just a few minutes. But first, what did we get over the last 7 days? This map shows the last 7 days of accumulated precipitation, and there have been some exceptionally heavy rains in parts of the Corn Belt, while other folks have not seen a drop. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. You can see there were some pretty nasty storms that went through parts of Chicago over the last couple of days, and in total, they saw in some parts of Chicago better than 7 inches. This is an image from College of Lake County, a picture taken here by Morgan Klogmeyer, and this incredible picture shows an auditorium just submerged in water. And then this other picture taken by Mike Hammernick shows carp that have been washed up onto a street from a nearby swollen river. And again, this is in northern Illinois. But a lot of this heavy precipitation, again, was, near a city, not necessarily where we have quite a bit of corn and soybeans being grown. By the same token, I have to show you this. After last Sunday night's nasty storms went through parts of southern Minnesota, this was a field in Britt, Iowa, had 6-foot tall corn. And that's what the strong winds of that storm did. And we have had a lot of severe weather, many tornado reports, some huge hail reports, and some very strong straight line winds. But this is going to be where I stop kind of showing you the severe weather. But outside of that, look, Nebraska got a pretty big drink here, but parts of North and South Dakota dry, parts of Missouri, parts of Kansas, and parts of Iowa dry as well. And even though we did get quite a bit of precipitation here in central Illinois, this wasn't enough to make up for the longer-term deficit. And this is what I'm talking about. Here's the last 14 days of precipitation expressed as a percent of normal, valid through late in the evening on Wednesday. I'm concerned about this stretch right in through here. You see, the eastern part of the Corn Belt has been very, very wet. In fact, Jason Little from Agrible got this fantastic video here near Defiance, Ohio, and where they've had better than 10 inches of rain over the last month or so. And what we can see here is very clearly where the tile drains lie in this field. And so you can really see how the field has been draining as an evidence of the very heavy rains there. But let's come back to this image. Notice how we've had a lot of hit or miss thunderstorm activity. Parts of Missouri, northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, big chunk of Indiana, big chunk of Ohio, very, very wet. While parts of Illinois, especially getting near St. Louis, stretching through western Iowa, getting into parts of Minnesota, but really the Dakotas, very dry. My point is to show you how uneven everything is this year, simply due to the very kind of hit or miss nature, the sporadic nature of these thunderstorms. Well, speaking of thunderstorms, late on Wednesday night, we basically have a boundary that stretched from east to west right in through here that was bringing more showers and storms. Good news is we were getting more precipitation in central Illinois. A lot of precip earlier in this week, but still we need more of it here. Look at this, northern Missouri, a place that really can produce quite a bit of corn and beans, getting some rain. Nebraska getting much needed showers, as is parts of Kansas. But the Dakotas are quite dry, so when we look at the forecast moving forward, we need to see where that rain is going to be over the next couple of days. And that's what this animation shows us. Let's let it play out, just kind of get a picture of what's going to happen here, and start it right back over at the beginning. So here we are, getting into Thursday morning. We can see that boundary right in through here. This is really early on Thursday morning, still kicking off those showers and storms. We're hoping that some of those storms do move through central Illinois throughout the day, but Indiana and Ohio don't need this rain. They've been very, very wet. Now what I do see is I click through Thursday, and I get into late Thursday, into Friday, into Saturday. We can see that really a lot of the Corn Belt tends to dry out over the weekend, and that's an important thing to be looking at. If I stretch this out and look even longer term, I want to show you the next 10 days of precipitation as forecast by the ECMWF. That's the European model. Now, it's very, very difficult to forecast the exact location of thunderstorms. That is one of the beauties of our atmosphere, that it's still unpredictable in trying to figure out exactly where the storms are going to be. But overall, this is what the ECMWF is saying, and I want to make sure that you see this very clearly. When you look at this and you see all this heavy precipitation in eastern South Dakota and in southern Minnesota, Wisconsin, northern Illinois, Michigan, northern Indiana, most of this precipitation is coming in very late in the forecast time period. And what that means, the translation of that, is that the model is not going to be accurate at predicting where that heavy precipitation band is going to be 7, 8, 9, 10 days in advance. So I do not have a lot of confidence in seeing this heavier precipitation right in through here in this long-term kind of 10-day outlook. I think that we're going to be actually tending to be a little bit drier than average over the coming days, and I want to explain to you why I think that. Well, let's talk about temperatures before we get into that longer-term forecast for precipitation. What you've got here were Wednesday's high temperatures, and it was a scorcher across parts of the United States. Now, we have been seeing all the heat kind of tucked away up here in the Dakotas and stretching up and down north and south here across the Great Plains. But we had 100-degree temperatures stretching across parts of Kansas, into southern Iowa, into parts of Missouri, and into Illinois, at least upper 90s getting this far. Well, what are we looking at over the next few days? Well, the pattern's going to shift such that heat on Thursday, which you can still see stays confined here, southern Illinois getting better than 90, big chunk of Missouri, and then, of course, parts of Kansas and Oklahoma and the Dakotas still quite warm. But look at this. By the time we get into Friday, we're going to watch the heat kind of build back out to the west again. A scorcher in parts of the Dakotas on Friday and, of course, in the southern plains. But we see that the eastern Corn Belt stays out of those, mid to upper 90s temperatures as we get into Saturday, here's Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So what we see in the near term is that the eastern Corn Belt kind of goes back toward average temperatures, maybe a slight warm bias, but the central plains and the northern Corn Belt certainly get quite warm. Now, this is where I think things get quite interesting. You see, I'm showing you the European model's forecast for the position of troughs and ridges by July 19th. And what we see is that the European model has shifted the mean position of the ridge to set up right over Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, and Iowa. That's quite a shift over where it has been for most of the beginning of July, which has been focused out west. And that's why we had the higher temperature anomalies for the first 11 days of July out west. So now we're seeing a shift of that heat here. There is some uncertainty about this, and this is what I mean. This is what the U.S. model called the GFS is seeing. It does see a broad ridge, but it still keeps the main ridge axis to the west. Right now, I am tending to focus more on the European model, which is this one, because it's been a better performer as of late. So what we need to be watching out for here is, as we move into this second and third week of July, I think that the probability of us getting a lot more of these big ridge riding thunderstorms will be diminished somewhat as the ridge tries to push itself to the east by the time we get into July 19th. So whereas we're going to have some near normal to maybe slightly above average temperatures as we move into this weekend for the eastern Corn Belt, because the heat's going to set up back west, I think that the next pulse of heat is going to arrive sometime around the 17th, 18th, and 19th as this ridge, as you see here, slides over to the Midwest in the center part of the Corn Belt. So I don't see it getting set up there and staying permanently, but this is a big pulse of heat. And as it comes through, if it comes through drier, which is one of the things I'm anticipating, this could be some stress on the crop because of the delays in planting and the later maturity of the crop. This is some heat at the wrong time. So that's kind of my bigger picture outlook for, the next, let's call it 15 days or so. And again, there's a little bit different solution from the GFS model, but it's still important to see that there are some similarities. Now, as I finish this up, I want to take a look overseas. One of the regions we've been watching very closely has been the area just north of the Black Sea here in the Ukraine. Now, parts of Europe have been warm to start off July, but we've seen kind of cooler anomalies here where we grow a lot of corn and soybeans and wheat in Ukraine. But we do have some drought in that region. This is the latest European Drought Monitor update. Spotty drought throughout much of Europe, but this little area right in here is telling me that there's some stress on those crops in Europe still. But we are seeing here in Ukraine some relief with some anticipated precipitation over the next 10 days or so. Where I'm not seeing that is in northeastern China. So right in through here is a big ag production area for China. This is the first 10 to 12 days here of temperature anomalies in northern China. So we're seeing that, the same kind of latitude area that we grow corn in the United States. Well, where they do that in China, we have some very, very warm temperatures to start off the month. And in addition to that, it has been very dry in that region. This is the National Center for Environmental Prediction's Global Drought Monitor. And while we can see that drought really setting up here in northern China where they do most of their growing, we can also see it in parts of Europe. So I wanted to stretch this out and give you a little bit of a global perspective on what's going on. Well, with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. We hope you look forward to Agrible's next ag forecast on Monday. To get morning farm report for your operations, complete with a daily email that shows a snapshot of your field conditions each morning, go to morningfarmreport.com. Sign up for that free account. Full grower accounts are free if you sign up for our Sustainable Yield program or for growers who work with AD merchandisers. I look forward to talking to you again on Monday. Until then, be prepared for some adverse weather conditions as we move into the second and third weeks of July here in the United States. Thank you.